Hello and welcome everyone to today's webinar. The 10 most common PLM mistakes. My name is Matt Pettit. I'm the marketing manager here at Domain, and I'd like to be the first one to thank you for joining us today, and I'm excited to introduce our speaker. But before I do, got a few housekeeping items here. First, pertaining to the Zoom webinar platform, we're going to be holding the Q&A at the end of the presentation, so feel free to enter in any of the questions that you have at any point during the webinar, and that's going to be located at the bottom bar here, where it just says the Q&A box. Every question is going to get an answer, and if we don't get to your question or if we run out of time, we're going to email you an answer directly. There will be a recorded version of this webinar provided, and we're going to email out that link when this is made available along with the slides from today's presentation as well. All right, before I introduce Jeff, let me cover a few items here about Domain Systems. We are specialized in PLM applications. We are a full service PLM solution provider, and we have been around since 1996. Got about 20 years in the discrete manufacturing space, and we are fully staffed by professionals with an average of 12 years inside with field experience. Simply put, what we do is we implement, integrate, customize, and support your solutions, all with keeping an eye on PLM best practices. We've served over 400 customers spanning over 8 different verticals, and we have a wide array, of custom-built applications or process extensions. Feel free to contact us after this meeting. You can call or text our 801 number that's listed right there, or if you would like, you can feel free to email me directly. My email is there, and we're going to have this slide at the end of the webinar as well. So you don't have to screen grab this or anything. We'll keep this up for you. And just as a note here, we're going to have free project planning discovery meetings to all the attendees. So please take advantage of that. Without further ado, let's dive into our webinar today. We're going to be covering the 10 most common PLM mistakes. We're going to discuss how to discover procedures that need changes, the best practices for deployment, product classification, optimization, and finally, how you can maximize PLM value for its lifespan. Jeff Nichols will be presenting today, and he is the VP of Professional Services here at Domain Systems. In his 20 years of guiding companies in the PLM pursuits, it brought about this idea for today's webinar. So these are the common pitfalls encountered when planning and executing PLM, and these mistakes are costing you money and time. So let's avoid these mistakes, and this will drastically improve your guys' success. And with that, Jeff, I turn this over to you.
Great, thank you. All right, so just to start out, here's the top list of the 10 most common mistakes that we run into and have run into over the numerous years of working with different customers in the PLM area. We'll look at each one. The first one here is customers want to capture everything about the item or part or record, whatever it is. And the key thing you need to remember is don't get carried away and realize that if you put the attribute on that record, doesn't necessarily mean that somebody's going to populate it, right? So in fact, if it were up to me, 90% of all attributes on an item or change or whatever would be set to a required status somewhere along the releasing path that ensures the attribute is, that would ensure the attribute is necessary to the company, value added to the users, and provides insight into any problems or issues that you may encounter. All right, so follow the guidance relative to the answers to the first bullet or to the second bullet with the third bullet, and you can avoid yourself of having too many attributes and frustrations that nobody populates them. Now, the reason a lot of companies put all those attributes on there is because they find that their ERP system is cumbersome, and it's easier for them to use the intuitive, simple interface of Agile to put some of this ERP data in, and then have their integration, if they have, hopefully they have an integration, passing it through the wire into their ERP system. We need to make sure that we understand that there is definitely a gray line, right? Content, product content can span both the ERP as well as PLM relevant data, but let's not make that gray line the width of a canyon. All right, a couple rules to remember so that you know where you should focus on that information capturing is, and the simple statement is, let each system do what it does for a living. So in other words, your ERP system is a transactional system. It should hold transactional data, stock, serial number tracking, purchase orders, sales orders, etc. Those types of transactional activities are what should live in your ERP system. In your PLM system, it manages things relative to your product definition, that being your revision control, the life cycle of where it is in its development process, as well as any any releasing activities that go on. The sub bullets there you can see span standard PLM type records as well as processes. So keep in mind, and let's let each system do what it does for a living. All right. Now, in addition to that, when you're defining attributes, we find a lot of companies that find it difficult to harmonize data. And the reason I'm using the words harmonize is because that basically distills things down into a very succinct, meaningful definition. And it's hard. Admittedly, it is hard. However, making information free-form entry isn't the answer to not being able to harmonize. This table on the slide articulates some of the benefits, the four main top level benefits of using list type attributes instead of text type attributes. For example, it provides, if you use a list, it provides an easy, accurate, and consistent search value, right? So that when you go for a search, you know what you're searching for, right? You're not trying to interpret, anywhere from 10 to hundreds of other users' entry as to how they defined incorporation or incorporate or INC or whatever, right? It's a list value, it's defined, it has a specific meaning, and you're able to use that and have reliability in your result. Same thing provides, which that leads to then consistent metric reporting, right? It prevents entry of irrelevant data. Basically, there are those that do like to write novels. I agree. And there are places where a novel is appropriate, but wherever possible, make the novel free-form attribute field supplemental to the actual value and the harmonized meaning of that novel. And then the last one, it prevents typos, right? Even though you may come up with a standard, for example, capacitor being abbreviated to CAP, somebody may type the wrong letter and not catch it. So it helps to maintain your data integrity. And lastly, as I mentioned before, it is understood that text attributes, they do have their place, but it should be limited to information that cannot be harmonized. And it could be supplemental to that, but it's more it's beneficial, and you receive much higher value of your information and the time and energy that everybody puts into providing the information if you are using list type attributes. All right, the next thing is dealing with workflows, right? Trying to manage every task via a workflow creates a way overly complex management issue. A workflow task or status should have a defined meaning of accomplishment, right? So even though there are 16 different tasks that need to be accomplished in one status, that's fine. you're meeting a milestone or you're meeting a very defined accomplishment. All right. If you find or suspect that you have a workflow that is too long, then evaluate it using the last 2 bullet points. Okay. Basically, identify activities that can be done in parallel. If your workflow is too long because it's a series of tasks or a series of statuses, see what you can group into making it parallel and grouping them together into one status rather than having the serial effect. All right. If one is, we find a lot of times that the reason people put serial activities is because they want to ensure that somebody approves something before the next person does. And that's all well and good, but understand that can lead to overly complex workflows and way too long and lead time type things. I would suggest reevaluating possibly the dependency of somebody signing off before another person, because there are mechanisms that can let you know when somebody does or doesn't, or to communicate so that you can see what that person's reviewing result was. The second one is multiple and related processes have to be squeezed into one workflow, right? Seeing whether or not you can combine multiple workflows into one, right? Because I've had customers and experiences where it's just been a daisy chain of workflows. All right. In some cases that's appropriate, but in a lot of cases, those workflows could have all been combined. One workflow, one of those daisy chained workflows could have been the representation of one or no more than 2 statuses in the overall governing workflow. So look to see whether or not you can squeeze or combine multiple workflows into one. All right. Next one. Of course, as everybody knows, in order to do anything, you have to have the appropriate privileges. And we like to roll privileges up into roles, and those roles serve a particular purpose, and those roles are assigned to users. The key thing here is to align and structure your roles based upon job function. All right. All too often we run into conversations where an administrator has difficulty managing roles. It's largely due to the evolution of methodologies of how to do that, the inheritance from one system administrator to another system administrator, the lack of training that could exist amongst those systems administrators, as well as new approaches to address different requirements. Remember, in most cases, there is more than one way to solve a problem. The key is being able to identify and simplify the correct approach. Organized job function-based roles structure is one way of simplifying the management and security of your PLM implementation. All right. So with that, go back, look. If you find yourself having difficulty in assigning, or somebody new is hired and they become part of the engineering group, if you find it difficult to give them the needed privileges, then you need to think about this slide and how to go about doing this. And again, we're here to help you, but this is one of the biggest things that we run into, is because the security model of a solution ends up looking like a bowl of spaghettis. So anyway, there we go. Next, now in the workflows and relative to the roles and privileges, we find that there is a misunderstanding in a lot of cases around different reviewer types, right? So understanding what those reviewer types are is important, right? An approver is pretty obvious in the fact that they're approving content or they're approving something going forward, okay, whatever that something is. Even if it could be the fact that, yeah, I'm aware of this now. Well, no, that's a bad example. They're approving moving forward. Now, the one place where we run into a lot of discussion is relative to acknowledgers. All right, acknowledgers are they were put in place not for approving information, but for acknowledging that that you have understood or you've received something, right? Perfect example. If you have your excuse me, if you have your supply chain, or let's just do as a contract manufacturer, you have a contract manufacturer that is a strategic manufacturer, and they are tightly integrated into your manufacturing activities. If they are part of your PLM solution, you would want them to be part of either the request or the change order that is going around getting approval, making them aware of and communicating back any issues that they may see, such as, oh, that's going to drive your cost up because we got to retool this, that, and the other. Or, no, that's a more expensive component. If you're aware of that, that's great, move forward, but otherwise we're just making you aware of that cost. So you're involving that supply chain value-added entity only through an acknowledgement, right? They don't make the decision whether you make the change or not, you do. So acknowledgers are those people that are involved simply from a recognition and a input perspective. All right, and of course, observers are wannabe approvers. Sorry, that's just kind of what it is. In order to move forward in a lot of workflows, in workflows, their acknowledgement is not even required. And so they are just sort of like, for your information only, here you go. Okay, all right. Next, the controlling of foundational information. Okay, what I mean by that is manufacturers, suppliers, and customers are foundational, right? They're static. You create it once and it's used over and over and over and over again. If you allow a large group of users the ability to create those foundational type records, then you're going to end up with, inevitably, you're going to end up with duplicate records, because a manufacturer name could be spelled differently from one person to the other person. And rather than having a controlled area or set of people that know that a new manufacturer part is required, they look at the manufacturer names that are already in Agile, and they do a screening process to ensure that that manufacturer is not already there, or it could be in whatever PLM system. When they do that, then they are verifying, and then they follow the prescribed method of creating that static record, that static manufacturer as need. And then it becomes available for everybody's use. So it also helps to maintain a clean system, because it can be a massive project when trying to clean up and coordinate for any downstream systems, such as your ERP system, since that's typically your buying system of what manufacturer part you're really talking about with your buyer. So anyway, so controlling foundational and static records, is a best practice. The last two here of the, making up numbers 9 and 10, both of them deal with investing in your PLM solution. The first grouping of that investing in your PLM solution I want to speak to is maintenance, right? Just like a lot of other things in life, and using the analogy of your vehicle, if you do the little things throughout the entire life of your solution and of your investment, the longer life you're going to have in that solution, just like your vehicle, right? You do the regular maintenances, you do the regular tire pressure checks, new tires, the annual, full systems check. You do that regularly and your vehicle lasts a lot longer. All right. The analogy is very applicable to any technology things, right? We're suggesting a monthly maintenance where best practice is that you're running a verify every single month, right? It can be set up automatically, scheduled, and notify the DBA or the systems administrator of the results, right? It can automatically email it to you. There's no reason not to do that. That's the biggest thing that you can do on a preventative maintenance perspective. The second one is identifying a maintenance window where the system will be unavailable once a month by, to the user base, typically at night or off hours or whatever, if you're global, during a window of time that is least disruptive to the entire world. But for restarts as well as implementation of patches, etc., right? I mean, your monthly maintenance is important. Training of users, right? This is not only just the system administrator or just the end users, but systems administrators, right? There's always something new, always something that is understood that can be better understood in order to maintain a healthier database, a healthier user understanding and experience. And it allows the administrators to learn how to optimize the out-of-the-box capabilities as you go forward, right? Thus adding more value that the solution, that the PLM solution can offer back to the user base. Upgrades, right? Staying current on the latest technology stack. Technology changes every single day, every month. You find something new. There's always new stuff, and so software vendors and providers, they have to draw a line in the sand when they're developing that product with this version, this release. This is my line in the sand. Otherwise, they would never produce a product because it's constantly changing. So you need to understand the upgrades, stay current, not only for deprecating infrastructure pieces such as Windows, as well as Linux. Those OSs are being deprecated every year. There's another set that is being deprecated, and so therefore your support becomes compromised. So anyway, staying current with your upgrades, right? Third-party support. Many times customers don't have the skill set or staff to support their system in the way that it needs to be. So they augment their staff with, quote unquote, a third party. This brings a broader and deeper knowledge to problems. It becomes an information source for the on-premise or the local system administrator. If they have trouble and difficulty doing things, they can pick up the phone or put a ticket in and then work through the issue with the particular systems administrator. So all of these four things are dealing with the maintenance side of investing in your solution. All right, the next piece is dealing with expansion, right? I mean, more, a PLM solution is more than item and change record management, right? It's much more broad than that, right? I mean, you don't just you don't just have an engineering department in your company. You have a quality department, you have a supply chain department, you have, manufacturing department. All those departments use the items, right? The item is the base entity that is used throughout the entire company, right? Changes occur to that item. Quality issues happen against that item. Compliance to environmental regulations happen against that item. So the item is definitely the foundation, but your PLM solution can be much broader than just item management, item and change, right? It can become a document management solution. It can become a compliance solution. It can become an enterprise quality management solution, adding 5 times more value than an independent off to the side quality management system, right? Because the likelihood of an engineer going outside of their engineering system is less likely than them clicking on a tab that says quality and seeing the quality records, thus improving the next generation of the product, right? So you've got a large footprint to choose from. And granted, it doesn't have to be all done in one fell swoop. It can be done little by little, phase by phase. Beyond out of the box, you've got some automations, right? A simple one that I don't understand why everybody doesn't have is the what they call auto incorporating or auto locking the any attachments and any content after the change is released, right? Locking it, even though, even for the change analyst, forcing the change analyst that if a change or if an update needs to be made to a released item on the attachment due to whatever reason, you have a log of the fact that it was unincorporated and then reincorporated when they were done updating. Okay, sign-off reminders, right? We all get inundated with email. You've got those, it gets lost in the shuffle. Well, an automated reminder to say, hey, you've got these five approvals that are waiting for you, and then you can access them and do them because you had gotten busy with other things. The other one is, being able to automatically provide the appropriate access to your supply base. So, push discovery, pushing the discovery or pushing the ability for your supply base to view specific records and record content of a bill of material or of just an item itself. And then the second one is relative to the integrations, right? If you don't have an integration to your ERP system right now, you're losing out on a tremendous value. The time involved to rekey, let alone the accuracy of rekeying and fat fingering things, you will pay for that integration. We've had experience where it's been paid for in less than 6 months, and we've had it where the longest one has been, it's been paid for within a year, or thereabouts a year. So integrations to your downstream ERP system, as an example, is huge. It provides a tremendous amount of value that is, that you probably don't realize, because you've never experienced it. Anyway, so that's investing in your PLM solution, part 2. Those are your top 10 items. Do we have any questions, Matt?
Yes, we do, Jeff. Let me go ahead and put these together here. First one, this one came in around the 15-minute mark. Do acknowledgers have to approve?
No.
Simply put, I like it. All right, next
right? Because
question.
you're paying them a courtesy, right? You're paying that acknowledger a courtesy to acknowledge it. They don't have to. If they don't, then I would suggest that a conversation happen with that acknowledger saying, I'm involving you and I want your feedback, please acknowledge. So that's, but no.
Perfect. Next question that came in. Domain offers a fast start implementation. What is the difference between that and a traditional deployment?
The fast start implementation is it's a predefined database that has the framework of a security model, the foundation pieces of we every year we reevaluate and we update the fast start model based upon experiences and best practices that are uncovered. And so the the baseline and the starting foundation for workflows, security model, as well as items that are involved, as well as it provides a quote unquote training user framework also, so that if you want to do some training, you can do training using these training user 1 through 15, I think is what it is. And those roles and privileges are used just as like they would be to a regular user. So yes, we do.
All right.
Okay, hold on, sorry, I didn't answer the second part. Versus a traditional implementation, you're starting from bare bones, you're recreating everything. This gets you, I'm gonna use loosely, this gets you 80% there, ready to start using the system, right? Because we're tweaking and we're adjusting to your unique needs versus having to build everything from the ground up, right? We're not digging the foundation, we're not pouring concrete, we're not putting a subfloor in. All of that, the subfloor skeleton structure is already there. Flexible enough to where if you want to add a bay window, it's not a big deal. You just take, you're looking at the spec home and there you go.
All righty. So the next question is, what is the priority information managed in PLM that companies want/need passed to an ERP?
Well, the typical information that is passed from PLM to ERP obviously is the item number, description, unit of measure. Right? No ERP system will accept a record without a unit of measure. So unit of measure, and then the revision, and typically the effective date of that particular item. All right, so those are the 5 main. I may be missing one, but that gives you an idea of what the 5 main are for the item master creation. Then it transfers the bill of material, the parent-child relationship bill of material, with quantity, with find number, and with reference designators if you're using them, type information. And then, of course, if you don't have to, most ERP systems just have an attribute that references the change order number that is used to push that transaction to your ERP system. But we've also had customers where they utilize the change management ERP solution, and it populates all of that content. But typically we run into just an attribute for the number and sometimes the description of what that change was.
All righty, this one is a 2-parter.
Okay.
What is the process of helping a company understand the individual's responsibility in terms of PLM roles and privileges, the who does what, when, and where?
Okay, so the way that we go about this is via a workshop. And for lack of better words, we sketch out the workflow, and we identify the attributes that have to be available on every item of the affected items and change order and bill of material if necessary. And we basically create the matrix of who owns that responsibility. And the collective group is there to hash out who's going to own it, right? They've decided that that's important to the company to do that and to populate that attribute. Who's going to own it? And collectively, the cross-functional team agrees that it's engineering, it's quality, it's supply chain, it's it's the change analyst, it's dock control, whatever it is. So through a workshop and through an extensive, very low-level, detailed understanding of the business process, the core team, which is cross-functional, agrees to who's going to own what and do what, where, and when.
What is the process of determining what a supplier can or should see?
It depends upon what you want to expose, right? I mean, how tight is the relationship with that supplier? Certainly there are things that have to be there. If they are the supplier of a subsystem, you need to provide them with access to the entire item maybe not the cost or the price if that's what you got, but all relevant data on the item master as well as BOM structure, as well as any attachments to on those items that they will need in order to understand what their function and responsibility to deliver is. So it varies company to company based upon what access the supplier may have to their design environment.
Alrighty. We had a long question here, and I think this might be the last one. I'm new, and before me, there had been some turnover, different positions, and different methods of assigning attributes. Many of the super detailed novels you were talking about, what should be my next step for cleanup duty?
Oh, wow. That's going to take a lot longer than just this, because I would need to understand what your environment looks like to identify low-hanging fruit, I'll phrase it, so that you can have some quick wins, quick user experience benefits, things of that nature, versus those that are like cleaning up your manufacturer part, your AML. That is a massive task at hand, and it takes a long time. But providing some additional out-of-the-box automations or cleaning up some things, those can be quick, low-hanging fruit. I would suggest whoever you are, welcome to the party, first of all, being new. I would suggest using that phone number that we're going to get to again, making the call or setting up a time in which we can have some conversation.
All righty. I think that does it for the questions here. Thank you, Jeff. And thank everybody for joining us and asking your questions. And just to reaffirm, we're going to be sending out that webinar recording shortly. And then we're going to leave this slide up here. So if you want to contact us and take advantage of that free project planning discovery meeting, please do. And otherwise, I hope you guys have a wonderful day and stay quarantined and stay safe. Thanks, everybody.